Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you on the screen. Other pairs will be analyzed today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video because I do have a bonus pair in store. But yeah, guys, no trades for me this week. I didn't quite see the pullbacks I was after, and plus I did take a couple of days off to rest. So nothing in the markets, again, not a rush. If there is no trade, best thing to do is sit on your hands. But going to next week, let's see if we can find some positions. And quite frankly, actually, a few pairs are starting to look tasty. But as always, we'll start with Euro USD. So Euro USD this week, expecting more downside. I was looking for some pullbacks on Euro. This is one of the pairs that I was basically talking about, that I was looking for some pullbacks. Didn't quite see the pullback I was after. I was looking for the retest of this structure for some shorts. Heavy move to the downside, didn't see much pullback, and then we had a nice break to the downside out of that support level, and again, no retest of that level there as well. So Euro's fallen to the downside, and again, dollar's very strong this week as well. But now Euro is heading to our higher time frame target, which is this daily support. So you've just about tested this level by a pip or so. So I'm still pretty bearish with Euro. I do think eventually the market will actually take out this low and go further. So I actually still believe there's more downside for Euro. I still believe there's more upside for the DXY. However, I don't want to be looking to sell directly into the support level. It doesn't make sense from a technical perspective. Even though I'm bearish on the pair, I need to see the market move up first before I start selling, or potentially break through, and we can look for some retest underneath. So that's kind of what I'm looking for Euro USD. We are coming into some key daily support, but I do want to see a pullback. You can see we've been bearish for quite a while now. Consistent lower highs with Euro for quite some time. 1, 2, 3, and of course these miniature lower highs as well, but we're still taking out lower lows and creating some more. So I'm looking for some pullbacks, and I got two areas of interest where I can see the market pulling back from. And again, I'm looking for some slightly deeper corrections now for Euro, because we've had a very impressive move to the downside, but now we're coming into some big levels of daily support. So I'm expecting to see some type of reaction. Therefore, any shallow retracement won't quite do it for me. I want to see a slightly bigger one, aka into one of these two levels, resting at 1.0774. Some shorts from there, and also if you push a little bit higher, we've got some nice confluence just above it around 1.08400. So those are my two areas of interest going into next week. Again, I want to see a bigger pullback with Euro because we are approaching that daily support. So although I am bearish, I do want to see some first half of the week bullish momentum just to get to those areas, then probably some shorts later that week. So I'm expecting these lows to go, but of course we are coming to some daily support, so be careful with your shorts. And course for target is just looking for price to come right back down to where we came from. So with Euro USD, still expecting more downside momentum, but first do want to see some pullbacks. Keep an eye on 1.0774 for some sales, and also 1.08400 as well. So that's the plan going to next week for Euro USD. Okay, so on to dollar yen. So dollar yen pretty bullish this week, some more upside. We were looking for price to go and take out the highs here, which we managed to do pretty early on in the week. By Tuesday, by Tuesday, price was already trading above that high. So I did say a retest of this area would be nice, which we just about missed, missed it by a pip or so. It was outside of my session. It was during the Asian session we saw a big push down, so I wouldn't have been awake to even take the trade, even if it did come down a little bit deeper. But nonetheless, the market is still consistent with the higher highs and higher lows. Dollar yen has been very consistent with this bullish trend, so my bias for quite a while now, maybe past month or two, has been bullish for dollar yen, and still is bullish going into next week. We are still persistent with these higher highs and higher lows. The market's just created the new high this week, and it looks like it's just creating a new low. So for next week, buys still look good. However, we are approaching some resistance right now, so of course it doesn't really make much sense to be looking to buy dollar yen now. But if we can break through this, see some decent momentum above it, some pullbacks, some retests, that looks like a very nice area to go long and take advantage of some buys. I'm still looking for dollar yen to come into 150, which is all the way up there. So we've still got a bit of a way to go. For dollar yen, you can see the higher time frames as well, still very consistent with the higher highs and higher lows. So there's a lot of wind in the sails for the market to keep pushing north. And 150 is a big old level, which I think we can revisit, maybe have a big sell-off from there, or maybe even break through. We'll find out when we eventually get there. But for dollar yen, still keen on the buys, just need to wait for a break of the high, because of course don't want to be buying into resistance. Then we look for some pullbacks, try and anticipate the next higher low, and then look and take dollar yen to the upside. Again, in terms of targets, I probably won't be looking at trading it all the way to 150. Of course, you can, it does make sense, but I probably want to take my profit a little bit sooner than that. There's a high here on 148.800. Depending on risk reward, that might be a nice place for either a partial or just getting out the trade altogether. So, we'll see how the market sets up for the trade next week. But longer term, we are looking for 150. So for dollar yen, still looking at more upside. Wait for the break and retest of 147.800, and then look for some longs back to 150 next week. Okay, so over to USD CAD. So USD CAD is still in a very sensitive area. I'm not really keen on trading USD CAD. I am pretty bullish on dollar. So pairs like pound USD, euro USD, AUD USD, and NZD USD, I'm expecting to continue to head to the downside. However, with USD CAD, although I can see it heading higher, in terms of the technicals, this is not a good place to be looking to buy. If I zoom out, this is the daily time frame, by the way, we can see we are coming into a vicinity where sellers will be lurking to try and push price down, looking for potentially that third lower high. So we've got one over here, second one over there, and potentially could see a third and a push to the downside for dollar CAD. Yeah, I would not be surprised if we were to see a move as such. So therefore, if I'm looking to buy dollar CAD, this would not be the best time for me to buy. It would be a much smarter decision to wait to see if price can break through this area, use this area of support, and then continue this uptrend that we've had for about a month or so back to the highs here on the left, potentially the highs there too. So there is definitely room to the upside for dollar CAD, but in terms of where we're trading, it's not a smart decision to be looking to buy dollar CAD right now, and it could actually be a smart decision to be looking to sell. I would wait for some lower lows and some lower highs first, so something like this, and then catch some shorts, maybe in a retest of some structure. This will make up for a really good sell opportunity, because as of right now, the market is still pretty bullish. We're still very consistent with the higher highs and higher lows here. So I think if you are looking to short because of where we are, it does make sense. But in terms of the structure, we are still pushing to the upside. So let's see if we can actually change that structure to bearish, see some lower highs creeping in, and then short on a break and retest somewhere where we get a nice opportunity of confluences, then of course a short would make a lot of sense. But at the same time, we could break through, and a retest could be good for some longs as well. So all in all, very neutral on dollar CAD, very neutral, waiting for price to kind of make its decision for me, and then I'll follow that direction depending where structure takes us. So if we start breaking through the highs and the higher lows, and then I'll look for a retest, and then of course look for buys. If we start breaking structure to the downside, start forming some lower lows and lower highs, then of course I'll look for a retest somewhere for some sells. So dollar CAD, very sensitive region here. Don't want to be jumping in. Could see a lot of noise in this area. I want price to break out in a clean, impulsive manner. Show me okay, price either breaking up or breaking down, and then I'll look to follow that momentum later in the week. So the plan for dollar CAD is neutral, but if you start clearing the highs of 1.37, we'll call it, probably some buys after that will look good on some retracements, and we start forming some lower lows and lower highs depending where that is. Could see some shorts and some push, some moves back down to take out these lows, potentially retest that structure there as well. So all in all, for USD CAD, stay patient. I don't have a clear bias just yet, but depending which way we unfold during the week, stay tuned during the streams to keep up to date with my thought processes. But still neutral. But if you do break to the upside, we'll be looking at a push into the high here at 1.38500, which is this high there on the left. If you do break to the downside, we'll be looking for a push into this high here at 1.33700. So that's the plan next week for dollar CAD. Okay, so on to euro pound. So euro pound still have a bearish bias for this pair. Had a bearish bias coming into the week. Didn't really see much. We started off the week a little bit bearish and we pushed back up again. I was talking about price coming back into this area for some shorts. We do have some nice confluence slightly higher up. Although I'm not too particularly keen on the pair, it's a little bit more sideways than anything on the 4H. I'm getting my bearish bias from the higher time frames. We can see we are pretty consistent with these lower highs here, so that's kind of where the bearish bias comes from. But as you can see, we're more or less still trading in this same vicinity here, so it's not on the top of my watch list. It might not even make my watch list next week, but there is a slight bearish trend. So for people eager to trade euro pound, I would say some shorts around 0.86 still look good. Trying to anticipate that next lower high which we've been printing, and looking for a move back down to the low of the range, which is basically back down here at 0.85. So that's still the plan for euro pound. This was the plan coming into the week, but of course we didn't really see price come into this vicinity, but now if we can come and test it, we're not too far away. See what type of price action we can get in this area, see some healthy rejections. Shorts will look good, stop loss above the area, and of course some shorts back down to the low. If you do start breaking through this area, I'll probably just pause on euro pound altogether, because at that point we're starting to break structure, we're losing some confluence, we might start fluctuating continuously in this range here. So at that point, I'll probably just wait for even bigger breakout, either above these areas here or below those areas, and then look for some opportunities, because in this area it's just quite noisy, but there might be some last ditch chances here to get some shorts back down to the low of the consolidation if we can see some decent rejection next week. So keep an eye on 0.86, still bearish bias for euro pound. I would recommend not trying to push the trade too far, because of course this is a very strong level of support which has been respected a few times, so it makes good for a TP, but we'll see what the market does next. So keep an eye on 0.86 for some shorts next week for euro pound. Okay, so on to AUD/USD. So bearish for this one. We did see some nice moves to the downside this week off the high here. This is what we were looking for. As price was coming back into the resistance, we're looking for price to hold on to that for move to the downside. We were also retesting some broken support here on the left, which is now time resistance. You can see the wicks down the daily chart. So the market was having a really hard time trying to break through this area last week. So we were expecting a push back down to the lows of the consolidation, which is resting around 0.63600. But again, I'm still not eager to jump into some shorts just yet with AUD/USD, because we're still moving sideways. I need price to start breaking the lows, start breaking to the downside, see some nice momentum away from those lows, and then retest some pullbacks, then I'll be interested to short it. I still do have this one going back down to 0.62. We're getting closer and closer by the day. So I still do think there's a lot more downside to be had for AU. There's a possibility of a bigger pullback. Say we respect the consolidation low. There's a possibility we could do something like this and then come down. So if you do start seeing some big momentum to the upside, stay patient. I will be expecting a big little high to form, and then some shorts later will be looking good. But as of right now, we're still resting in the consolidation, so just wait and see if we can break to the downside first, and then I'll be looking for some shorts on the retest of that consolidation. Very simple going into next week. So keep an eye on the break and retest, the 0.63600. We haven't got the breakout yet, so like I said, there's still a possibility we could do something like this. If we start doing that, I'll stay patient with AU. I'm not really looking to do anything in here, but if we can start breaking the low, that's when I'll become interested. And we've got 0.62, not too far away now. Again, it's kind of similar to USD JPY. We're looking for price to come back into these lows here, which are a little bit far. There could be some areas to take some partials along the way, or just outright target. There is this low here on the left, which was a very nice place of support where we did see a lot of bullish momentum from. This could be a nice place for partials, or just have a target in general. But I do see price going to that 0.62 mark eventually. So with AU, still looking at the breakout. Keep an eye on break and retest the 0.63600, and some shorts back down to 0.62 eventually. Okay, so NZD CAD up next. Now this is very similar to AUD/USD, which we just went through, in terms of we still do have a very aggressive, I would say, bearish bias on this one on the higher time frames. I still do see there's a lot more downside left for NZD CAD. I'm looking for price eventually to come back into these lows here. This is the weekly time frame, by the way. So I'm looking for price to eventually come back down to those lows, which are pretty far away. So we're not really looking to target them anytime soon, but I'm looking at price coming back into this daily support on the left, which is resting around 0.79300. So I still do see more downside for NZD CAD. This is the first next major target for NZD CAD on the daily chart. So I am expecting price to drop to the downside. However, price action for the past few weeks have been very messy. We've been consolidating equal lows here. We've been making slightly higher highs, but essentially the market has been failing to break through this broken support time resistance here. So with NZD CAD, it has been very messy. Haven't really been keen to trade it, but if we can start breaking to the downside, again, some breaks and retests do look good for some shorts going into next week. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for NZD CAD as well. Risk to reward might not be as good as AUD/USD, because the level we're looking to short from is not too far away from the next major target. But price could potentially go a lot lower. We've got the wick target there potentially as well. There's some areas here as well we can target sooner or later. But yeah, the first major target isn't too far away. So we see what we can get in terms of the entries, if it's worthwhile. But I do see more downside for NZD CAD still. However, if we do not break through the low and we just keep seeing price bouncing in this area, again, similar to AUD, I will stay put and just sit on my hands. I'm not interested to trade markets that are just moving sideways. If you can start breaking to the downside with some momentum like we saw over here, that's fantastic. Looking at break and retest off the back of 0.79, basically 0.8, and some shorts back into 0.79300 for next week. Okay, so next up we've got pound NZD. So pound NZD pretty much consolidating now. Not really too interested in the price action in this area here. Market's failing to break through resistance and still holding on to support at the moment as well. I did say I'm still bullish for this one, and I am still bullish for pound NZD, but I do want to see a more confident breakout of the high here at 2.13500, we'll call it. No, 2.13700. So I want to see a confident breakout of this high, retest it, and then look for some longs back to the highs there on the left. Very, very nice, simple trade to follow, but price didn't give us the breakout we were looking for. A few attempts to try and break out, but essentially it failed, and it came back in respect to that area. So with pound NZD, I'm still bullish. Higher time frame still showing a lot of momentum. You can see the daily chart here, very confident uptrend. Weekly chart, if I snap onto that as well, market's been breaking through numerous highs for quite a while. I'm looking for us to eventually go and take out that wick there on the left. So I still do see a lot more upside for pound NZD. However, in terms of actually looking to buy the pair, I would say it's not quite ready yet. I'm still keeping an eye on 2.09. This is a big level of resistance. Didn't quite see the retest of it. So I still do think if pound NZD is going to see a bit more downside, we're most likely going to end up here. And this is where we can look for some nice buys to the upside. In terms of risk reward, looks very, very favorable. Potentially could hold for a big swing to the highs there. Although I probably wouldn't do that, it definitely is a possibility if we're going to follow that higher time frame trend. And also we'll keep an eye on this resistance again, just in case we start rejecting this low, come back up, look for the break and retest. And of course, this is like a solid opportunity back to the high as well. So with pound NZD, nothing's really changed in terms of the setups we're looking for. Still looking for a bigger retracement if we do get that, or a break of the high there if we do get that as well. Then look for some retest, because right now we're kind of just moving sideways. I'm still treating this price action as just a bigger correction for pound NZD, because we have had a pretty impressive impulse to the upside. You know, we had a big breakout out of this consolidation, a very, very big move. So I'm treating this as the impulse correction. Now I'm looking for the buys either a little bit further down, or if you start breaking through some resistance, then I'll take a look at some buys next week. So the plan is breaking retest of 2.13 or a bigger pullback into 2.09, but still expecting price to head north to eventually take up the highs at 2.15 next week. Okay, so on to CAD Yen. So CAD Yen still bullish bias. However, this one has been very, very choppy the past few weeks. It had some equal lows here, had a higher low over here, higher low, and looks like the market's printed another higher low. So we are still slowly pushing to the upside, but more or less, this is basically consolidation. So I am taking this with a pinch of salt with CAD Yen. I do have a higher time frame bullish bias. As you can see, the market has been trending to the upside quite well. Nice retracement here, very impulsive retracement, but since then the market's been chugging to the upside very, very slowly, and I'm expecting us to come back into some resistance up here around the 110 mark. So that's where my target is for CAD Yen in the higher time frames. I'm looking for the market to slowly push into that area over the next few days. So that's the plan for CAD Yen in terms of bias and direction. But in terms of actual trading opportunities, nothing has quite cemented itself yet. We're still trading in that same vicinity as that resistance. Looks like we are starting to slightly break through it, but I want to see price really pull away from that level, and then I will consider looking for some break and retest, because anything with such a shallow breakout like that, more often than not, is normally a false breakout. Especially when we've seen price just clear it by one candle. I want price to really pull away, give me 2-3 good impulsive moves to the upside, and then of course I'll look for some retracements, some pullbacks, retest, and look for that next higher low, and kind of continue with this theme of the market keeps pushing up, spiking lower, higher low, and then continuing. So the plan for CAD Yen definitely is buys going to next week, but again, have to be careful, need to see price actually breaking through that resistance, and then I'll consider looking for some retests of 108.250. So definitely looking for some buys next week for CAD Yen, but only on the break of that level. Wait for some retests, wait for some entry signals, and then buys back up into 109.500 next week. Okay, so onto pound USD next. Did see some nice downside this week. We were favoring some more downside back into 1.245, and we just about come into that area. Some nice selling opportunities on the lower time frames, really healthy price action, impulse correction, impulse correction, impulse correction, so on and so forth. So some really nice price action on the lower time frames, but we are coming into some major support on the daily chart. So I'm pressing the brakes a little bit. Same thing with Euro USD. We're coming to some big support levels. So although the price action is still bearish, the structure is still creating lower lows and lower highs. Therefore, I am bearish in the market. But I'm definitely aware of the levels we're coming into, making sure I'm not shorting directly into a big level of support, and that's kind of where we're coming into now. So I still do favor more downside, but I want to see a bigger retracement first for some shorts. I do think we've got a good opportunity to come back into these lows here, but first we might see a bit of a pullback and then get the move to the downside. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for next week for pound USD. You can see pretty consistent lower highs for the time being. I'm looking for the market to pull back, give us another lower high somewhere, and push to the downside. So we do have some nice confluence coming into this area here, breaking retest of this low, possible even retest of this area up here as well, just above at 2.65. One of those levels I'm interested into short from. Of course, I'll just see what type of price action we get when we get to those levels. If it looks good, then of course I'll look for my entries. If we're just not really seeing much rejection, any entry signals, then I'll wait for price to go to the next one and then repeat the process. But in terms of direction and areas of interest, is definitely looking at shorts and definitely looking at these two areas here. So 1.25700 and also 1.26200. Keep an eye on those levels. In terms of targets, it's probably sensible just to aim for the prior low, because we potentially could break out, but we do have the possibility of price coming back into that same vicinity, rejecting it, and then coming back against us. And again, if you can get a decent risk reward into that level, 1 to 2s, 1 to 3s, you know, why not just take your profit at the levels there? So yeah, pound USD expecting more downside. Hopefully we can see a bigger pullback first, similar to euro. Keep an eye on 1.25700 and 1.26200. But yeah, looking at price coming back down to 1.25 and maybe eventually 1.235 next week. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD, some nice moves to the downside this week. We were looking for price to break through this support level, which we eventually did. I did miss a short on this one on a retest of this level here as a lovely short on Friday. And yeah, price did react quite nice too, that we had some news as well for CAD, which did help push price lower. But I still do see a lot more downside for pound CAD. I'm looking for price to come back into this support level. We're now cracking through a big level of price support, was resistance briefly, but again acting as support briefly too. Now the market has cracked below that on the daily chart, so I do still see more downside for pound CAD back into this level here, resting at around 1.68700. So the plan for pound CAD definitely is to shorts going into next week. I would want to see a bigger retracement for pound CAD. I'm not trying to get short down at these lows here. So if you can see a bigger retracement, retest that daily area and that trend line, you can see the market has been pretty consistent with these lower highs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if we can get another one in that vicinity, and then some shorts will be looking very, very attractive going into next week. Very similar opportunity to pound USD as well, which we just touched on, looking for that bigger pullback for some shorts. Again, pound CAD, pound USD are quite similar pairs. Most of the time they trend in the exact same direction. So yeah, nice to see some synchronicity between the two, but again, looking for the bigger pullback, whichever one looks good, I'll look to take depending on risk reward and entry, and then targets firmly down at these lows here, 1.68. 800 we'll call it. So shorts for next week for pound CAD, really nice price action, breaking lower, failing on that daily support level, expecting a push into those lows next week. Okay, so onto pound yen. So this week we did have some nice upside, but the market completely erased that following the second half of the week. Coming into the week, I did say if we can hold this level, I'll be expecting price to come back to the highs there at 186. Didn't quite see that happen. Market formed another lower high in comparison to those two previous highs and came back down into the support. So what I'm seeing for pound yen is the market kind of squeezing a little bit between the support level and this downwards trend line. The market is kind of just fluctuating in this area. So either we're going to see see the market break to the upside and become bullish again and follow that higher time frame bullish trend, which is still intact. We're still seeing higher highs and higher lows, but if we do break through that support and break to the downside with some good momentum, I will definitely be interested in some shorts. Again, I wouldn't say it's quite the reversal just yet, but I do expect us to see a bit more downside. Maybe price creates a bigger higher low somewhere and eventually we go bullish again. So breaking the low there is not that significant, taking into account the high time frame trend, but in terms of just the trading opportunity, I do think it's pretty significant, and we can probably find some good shorts to follow that along with. So for me, for pound yen, I'm interested to see what we do at this level here, 183.500. Like I said, if we do break through, sells look good. If we come back again and hold on to it as support, then of course buys look good as well, but I'm not too keen to take the buys because the buys are more or less in consolidation. Essentially, if we can break through this support level and break through and create some low lows and low highs, then we've got a bit of a trend to work with, and I'll be entertaining the sells there. But the buys were kind of just in this range here, so we might see a bounce, but the market could come straight back down again. So I'm not a fan of the buys for pound yen until we start breaking through the highs here. If we start breaking through them, then yeah, I'll be back looking to follow that trend. But as of right now, I'm kind of favoring the sells a lot more, but we haven't broken through yet, so we'll find out next week. So keep an eye on 183.500. I think that'll be a pivotal level. If we come back again, respect it. Buys will probably look good next week. If we just break through, then yeah, shorts next week will look very good, and probably targeting some of these areas down here around 180.500. So that'll be the plan next week for pound yen. Okay, so over to gold. So gold bearish bias this week. We did see a lovely move to the downside. I still do think there's more to be had for gold. I'm looking for a push into the lows here. We rejected a very key area on the daily chart. Coming into this area here, lovely wicks into that level. I'm looking for another lower high. So we had the original high up there. We dropped to the downside, lower high over here, dropped to the downside. Now I'm looking at that next lower high for a move again to drop to the downside into the low. So that's the plan. That's the directional bias for gold. Now we just need to find some good opportunities to actually sell it. And after this lovely move to the downside, I'm looking at this area here for some nice sells. Price is also holding on to some resistance here on the left in a kind of a weird head and shoulder, if you will, with the left head and then right shoulder. Possibly could see a drop from that level. I'm not too particularly keen from trading off the back of this level of resistance. Number one, price is kind of moving sideways, and number two, if I do short from there on the time frame that I normally trade on, the risk towards not looking too good into that first target either. So I kind of want price to break a little bit higher. Whether it does that or not, that's up to price. Again, I'm a trader, not necessarily trying to predict the future. If I can find a good trade, I'll take it. But if the market isn't presenting me a good trade, then I will hold off. If the market moves anyway, it was never my trade to take. So my mentality is hoping to see if we can push into 1936 and then get some sells, but equally we may just throw a few more wicks into 1925 and see a big drop to the downside. So it's up to you how you guys want to trade that, how you want to manage your trades. But in terms of direction, shorts look good. I'm not interested in buys whatsoever next week for gold unless we start taking out the highs here on the left. If we take out that high, then I'll put a pause to my bearish bias, but we're gonna have to have a pretty big move for that to happen. So I doubt we'll see that, but the market keeps surprising me. So I won't say it won't happen. Anything can happen, of course. So gold going into next week, high time frames look good. Did see a nice bearish move to the downside. Now looking at some pullbacks. Area of interest for me, 1936. We'll keep an eye on 1925 as well. And next target back down the lows at 1888 next week. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin didn't see much this week. The market was kind of moving sideways, had a big move kind of midweek. Actually, no, that was Thursday, Friday, and then came back down and didn't really do too much. But I'm still expecting Bitcoin to go and take out this low here, resting around 24,700. Still looking at Bitcoin pushing into these lows here. So I still do see a lot more downside for Bitcoin, especially after the recent move failing to really break through the highs here and seeing that big shift of momentum to the downside. So with Bitcoin, I do think the next move is definitely a drop to the downside. I did say this is a nice level to short from, didn't quite make it there. Potentially Bitcoin may stab a little bit higher one more time before the drop, but it may have just formed that kind of right shoulder to drop right now, with the left shoulder being here, the head and the right shoulder. I know it's kind of a bit of a weird head and shoulder pattern, but still fits the mold. And I'm looking at that low taken out. So for Bitcoin, I'll still keep an eye on 26,750. That was the area I gave out last week didn't quite see the test of, so potentially price may come up high just to test it before the drop. But in terms of direction, definitely looking at shorts. Again, don't really want to be looking to sell here. We're firing a lot of wicks to the downside. It's not a smart place to short, even though I do have a bearish bias. You definitely want to be selling from resistance and buying from support at the very least. So making a move up to 26,500 to short would be a sensible place to look to short from, and at least you can get some decent risk reward back down to the profit. I mean, back down to the level, and then you can take some profit and manage your trade accordingly. But in terms of direction for Bitcoin, definitely looking at sells and expecting more downside for Bitcoin next week, or eventually we could just move sideways again next week as well. But still keep an eye out 26,500 for some shorts. Next first target will be the 24,700 mark. Then we can start looking at 21,600 and potentially 20K as well. So that definitely is the plan going into next week for Bitcoin. And last but not least, we've got our bonus pair, which for this week is Euro CAD. So Euro CAD, I'm expecting more downside, similar opportunity to Pound CAD, actually very similar opportunity to Pound CAD. So we'll be keeping an eye on both those pairs going into next week, Euro CAD and Pound CAD for some shorts. With Euro CAD, I'm looking at a move back down into the lows. Oh, that's the wrong tool. I'm looking for a push back into the lows here for Euro CAD. We have failed at creating some higher highs, breaking out that consolidation. As you can see, now we are starting to break to the downside with some nice lower lows and lower highs. So looking to follow that momentum into next week. We are starting to form a bit of a bearish channel here. We can see those lower lows and lower highs kind of bunching together. So I'm looking to see if we can get a push back into the high of that channel, retest some broken resistance on the left, or broken support time resistance. So come back into this vicinity here, retest some broken support time resistance, and then catch the next leg to the downside and kind of continue with this pattern of consistent lower highs here. Pop, hopefully get another one as well. So I'll be keeping an eye on both Pound CAD and Euro CAD. I don't plan to trade them both, but whichever one can give me the better opportunity. Might see a situation where Pound CAD gets to the level, but Euro CAD doesn't quite do it. Therefore, I can get trading Pound CAD, or vice versa. Euro CAD gets to the area of interest, but Pound CAD doesn't. Then I get trading Euro CAD. So I'll be watching both of them, but I don't plan to trade them both because pretty much looking at the same position here, same trade. But yeah, Euro CAD, let's see if we can get pushed back to 1.46460, and then I'll be looking for some shorts back down to the low at 1.44900. So that is the plan next week with Euro CAD. Really do fancy this opportunity here. But yeah, guys, that does sum up the analysis for next week. If you have found it useful, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Let me know if there's any particular pairs you guys are focused on into next week. I'm keen to find out. If you are enjoying the content on the channel, guys, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe, hit the bell if you haven't done already. But guys, have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you all next week.